a meeting. Oh, yes. Tell us stories. Wouldn't it be interesting?
Over here you will see the old auditorium building. Also, part of the building was used for music, home economics, and the industrial arts. One of the goals of the school was to provide students with skills where they could leave and be instantly employable. And there are some trades and jobs that are traditionally associated with schools like this. For example, one of the women I spoke with who grew up in this area, who is now in her 90s, remembered as a child in the 1930s, students from the School of the Blind making brooms that would be sold door to door, often throughout Lansing. Caning was another profession that was taught in the blind community. If you had a chair in Lansing that was caned and needed repair work, many people would bring them here for that service. Another skill that was taught was piano tuning. It's often said that when one loses the ability to use one of one's senses, the other senses sort of miraculously pick up and cover for that. And there was a real emphasis on the auditory sense, the idea of hearing. Music was taught. There was an orchestra. There was a marching band at one point in time. There were several different choirs that sang across the school. It was really, there was a focus on letting students excel through the music and express themselves that way. In fact, at one point in time, there was even a piano tuning club on campus, in addition to classes being taught. There was also a lot of emphasis on life skills that went beyond simply buttering bread, how to keep a home. There was a chapter of the Future Homemakers of America here that many of the girls belonged to over the years. They would give both girls and boys instructions in cooking, in how to run a home, how to sew garments. One student who was here many years told me about how one Christmas he made everyone in his family something that he actually sewed on campus here himself. The idea was that when the students left, they would be able to be independent. And there are all sorts of little things they could do to help earn this independence. For example, students could work in the dining hall and make a little extra money that they could spend. They were encouraged to learn the city bus system once they were old enough to leave campus. Many students would go down the Northtown area and go shopping.
Yeah, you had to walk there.
You did. I spoke with one woman who remembers a young man from the School for the Blind who played the violin, who would come to her church and play, often on Sundays, which actually inspired her to take up the violin herself. The campus itself, of course, was a more controlled environment, and there were certain things even in the design of the campus. For example, the sidewalks that you're walking on. You may have noticed there is a ripple pattern on the edge of those. That was a way to help the students orient themselves on campus. But of course, certainly when one stopped off of campus, it was a different world that you were going into. But they would offer field trips where they would go different places in Lansing. Students, when they reached a certain age, could earn the ability to go to the mall, to go to these different places and really experience the city of Lansing as a whole. And a lot of those students actually decided to then stay in Lansing and make their home here. And there is a significant alumni community from the School for the Blind still in Lansing today. It's also interesting to me that this school had such a reputation at one point in time that it was actually sought out by families from other states. Dr. Seeley told me one story of an African-American gentleman who attended the school. He was born in Mississippi. Needless to say, in the 1950s, there were not a lot of resources in Mississippi that were open for him. His parents told stories of trying to take him to doctors, taking him to hospitals, trying to get him a diagnosis and proper care, because he was not blind, he was visually impaired, and no one would see him. No one would take him as a patient simply because of the fact that he was black. His parents had the means, though, to be able to relocate. So they actually, based on the reputation of this school, relocated and moved to Michigan. And their son was able to enroll here. He trained here and actually learned the skills of an auto mechanic and has gone on to own his own business and to be very, very successful. He is one of the patients that Dr. Seeley still sees today. Some students were trained in massage therapy. In fact, this was one of the first schools for the blind that integrated that into their curriculum and taught that here. So while certainly there is an argument to be made for inclusion and the idea of students not attending a school like this because they could be at home with their families and functioning in more of a quote-unquote normal setting, on the other hand, there was never any intention of keeping the students here and sheltering them. The idea was simply to provide them with skills that would help them to get ahead in life. And I think that's something today that we perhaps don't think about, because most of us, when we think of boarding schools, there's kind of a connotation about that that makes a lot of us uncomfortable. But the intention always was to send the students back out into the world and help them to function as contributing members of society in it.
There's a study that was in 1982 of all the schools for the blind nationally, and the Michigan school had the highest income for alumni
Really?
in the country.
That's very interesting.
We couldn't hear that.
In 1982, there was a study nationally that did all the schools for the blind at that time, which was most of them. And the Michigan school had the highest income of blind people in the country, alumni. There's about 4 of us here from the class of 72 here. Every one of us had careers in the community or outside in the real world. And I can tell you that out of my class, which was the 72 class, it only had 34 kids in it. It was the biggest class. 31. 31? 31. I'm getting older, you know. I'll bet you 27 or 28 of them worked careers. So the alumni of this school was very worked in the workforce and did pay a lot of taxes into our society because of the school. I mean, we can tell you stories all night long about the Boy Scout troop, the Girl Scout troop, and the things we went camping up north, taking the bus up north, new trips. I mean, we can go. The School for the Blind in its heyday in the 60s and the early 70s it really did bring us ready for our society. And blind people are not getting that today. They are not getting it. We got blind kids that are coming out of high school and they're teaching them to stay on SSI and the welfare system and subsidized housing. And I see it because I'm a blind person in the blind community. I'm the large one, and I'm seeing it every day with blind people. The agencies are not serving us.
Since the rain's starting to pick up, I would like to head back sort of the way we've come back to the original